everyone, Girl Jessi here. We're out in construction zone putting our ponds in, and I wanted to step off for a moment and show you this cute little thing we got going here. This is a fun way to naturalize your water feature and make it a little prettier, and it has the added effect of having carnivorous plants in here. So they're going to be eating insects, and they add a lot of color and beauty to your pond. So what we've done here, let's see if I can get a good shot here. There we go. So what we've done here is we've created this little pocket between the liner here under this driftwood and the stone. So there's this little pocket here inside the pond. And what we've done is put an underlayment in there, and we filled it with peat moss. So it gives the carnivorous plants a nice place to live. And that underlayment and that soil stays saturated by the pond. So we've kind of created a little mini bog here in the edge of the pond with these beautiful pitcher plants. These are carnivorous bog plants, and they are native to East Tennessee, so they will live all year round. So they're a great perennial to put in your pond to create a really natural look that goes with our environment. And then we kind of naturalized it here by putting in moss around the edges, so you don't really see any liner or underlayment. It just looks like a natural kind of beached spot on the edge of the pond. And that was a fun little trick we did here with our driftwood. Just make it look really natural and really beautiful. And it's so super easy to do. All I did was fill it with peat moss and put some plants in it, put some moss in it to make it look natural, picked a nice piece of driftwood. Easy, done in an hour tops. So there are just a few things you'll need to put in your carnivorous plant bog in your existing pond. First, you'll need the plants that you're going to be putting in. These are a nice little pitcher plant. So they're carnivorous and they like constant wet. You'll also need a 5-gallon bucket full of water, a bag of peat moss, and you'll need a piece of underlayment. So the underlayment should be sturdy, resistant to tearing, so rocks, it can handle the rocks. And the point of this is that it's porous, so it allows the water to get into the peat moss, but keeps the peat moss from getting into the water in your pond. All right, so this is the part where we start to get messy. So I've got my water gardening gloves on here. So what we're doing here is we're taking this 5-gallon bucket of water and we're putting peat moss in it and kind of making a peat moss soup. So just take some of this, drop it in the water. And the reason we're doing this is because this peat moss is very light and fluffy and it wants to float on the surface of the water. And it's going to make it very difficult. The wind is going to blow it in and blow it around, and it's going to float into your water and make a mess. So what you want to do is go ahead and saturate it before you even put it in your bog. So I'm just going to churn this about and soak all this peat moss. Get it nice and saturated, and kind of grind it with your fingers and make sure that the water soaks all of it. You don't have any air pockets of dry moss or dry peat moss. Once we've got this all nice and good mixed, so our underlayment should be nice and saturated now. So we can take this bucket over and go right to filling our pocket with this nice soaked peat moss. Okay, so now that we've got our peat moss nice and wet and our felt nice and wet, bring our bucket over here, set it in a nice convenient level spot. We're going to start taking our peat moss, just get it right there in our little pocket. You see how it wanted to float away out. That's why you want to make sure that the felt is good and enclosed. It's okay if you get a little bit of seepage out. It's not going to hurt your water. It's not going to hurt your fish. It's organic soil is all it is, so it's not going to hurt anything. You just don't want to get too much of it, because then you'll get murky, muddy water that you don't want to have to see. And these pockets, they don't need to be really deep. If you have to fill it deep to make the pocket where you want it, then that's okay. But these pitcher plants don't need deep soil. They just need a little bit. But you do want to make sure that you fill this all the way, because you don't want pockets with too much water. And if it's a little bit high out of the water, that's okay. If it's a little bit above the water level, that's fine. You just don't want it, you don't want the plants too deep, but it's okay if they're a little high, just as long as the soil can stay saturated and where their roots can reach that saturated level. They'll grow in. If you have small plants, it's okay, they'll grow in. But you don't want to put the peat moss anywhere outside the underlayment, because like I said, it's going to wash out, so you can see a little bit floating here in the water. And you may have to put some rocks in places to kind of hold it up. Adjust my hand here. So let's get some of these rocks. Over here, I'm a little bit lax, so I'm just gonna put some supporting rocks under these little corners, keep that from happening. And like I said, we're gonna blend in these edges, so don't worry too much about seeing underlayment, because we're gonna put moss in around that, and I'm gonna show you how to do that as well, so that you'll be able to hide all this. We're gonna use some foam, and all this will be very hidden. Okay, so I've got my plants here now. Now these are a carnivorous plant, kind of like a Venus flytrap, but you know, Venus flytrap is more of a tropical plant, and so this is a good replacement for something like that, because it is native here, so it is cold hardy. It will live in your pond all year long. It's not annual, you don't have to replace it. And they're native here, so it's actually already fit into our natural environment and ecosystem. We're gonna just take these out of here, and these have really good root systems. These were actually divided from some plants nearby. And you just pack it in just like you would any other garden. It's almost like regular gardening with a little water. Okay, so we've got nice, pretty little pitcher plants. I think I might move this one. Now, the peat moss, like I said, is going to settle in the water. So if you need to add a little bit more after you've got your plants in, you know, so just keep it handy. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Add some more right in here. And there we have it. Beautiful. So now that you have your bog plants in, now you want to blend in the edges. You want to cover up the visible underlayment and kind of blend it in with some rock and moss, which brings me to my second new favorite feature in these new ponds, is how we install moss in a brand new pond. You know, you get that unnatural necklace effect of the rock in a brand new pond, and we've actually used a new technique to cover that rock with moss and get that moss to live and take. And I'm going to show you how we do that.